When you grow old, never say these 5 sentences to your children. Otherwise, you will face disaster. Growing older is a privilege. With each passing year, we accumulate wisdom, experience, and memories. But as we navigate our later years, the way we communicate with our children becomes more important than ever. Words have the power to heal or harm, to bring a family closer, or create an unbridgeable gap. As parents, we may speak out of love, habit, or even frustration, not realizing the long term impact our words can have. Many older adults in the US struggle with feelings of loneliness, disconnection, or regret when it comes to their relationships with their grown children. However, the key to maintaining strong family bonds is not just in what we do, but in what we say, and sometimes in what we choose not to say. In this article, I will share 5 sentences that you should never say to your children as you grow older, and I will explain why avoiding these phrases can help you build a stronger, more loving relationship with them. Each lesson comes from real life experiences, reflections, and the wisdom of those who have walked this path before. Let's explore them together. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. 1. I have my own money. I don't need you to take care of me. There is a deep sense of pride that comes with financial independence. Many of us spend our entire lives working hard, saving, and ensuring that we would never have to rely on anyone, not even our children. It's natural to want to reassure them that we are not a burden, that we have everything under control, and that they should focus on their own lives without worrying about us. But sometimes the things we say with good intentions can have unintended consequences. Telling your children, I have my own money, I don't need you to take care of me, might seem like a statement of strength, but to them, it may feel like a dismissal. It can sound as if you are saying, you are not needed in my life. And when people feel unnecessary, they slowly drift away. A close friend of mine, Margaret, was a fiercely independent woman. She and her late husband had built a comfortable life, carefully planning their retirement so they would never have to rely on their children. When her son and daughter offered to help, she would laugh and say, "Oh, don't worry about me. I have everything I need." She thought she was being considerate, giving them the freedom to focus on their own families. Over time, however, Margaret noticed a change. The calls became less frequent. The visits grew shorter. Her children stopped asking if she needed help because, after all, she had made it clear that she didn't. At first, she convinced herself it was for the best. She was strong, capable, and self-sufficient. But as the years passed, the silence in her home grew louder, and she started to wonder if she had pushed them away without realizing it. One day, she suffered a fall in her kitchen. It wasn't serious, but it shook her. As she lay there for a few minutes, waiting for the pain to subside before she could pull herself up, she thought about her children. Would they even know if she needed them? And if they did, would they feel comfortable stepping in? Or would they hesitate, remembering all the times she told them she was fine on her own? Margaret eventually called her daughter, who rushed over immediately. As they sat together later that evening, her daughter admitted something that broke Margaret's heart. "Mom, you always tell us you don't need anything, so I stopped asking. I thought you wanted space." That night, Margaret realized something profound. Independence is a beautiful thing, but it should never come at the cost of emotional closeness. We may not need our children financially, but that doesn't mean we don't need them in other ways. As we grow older, our needs shift. We may not require financial support, but we need companionship, love, and the reassurance that we are not alone. Our children may not always know how to express it, but deep down, They want to feel like they are still an important part of our lives. Instead of saying, I don't need you, try saying, I am grateful for everything I have, but what I truly value is time with you. I have planned well for my future, but nothing means more to me than our connection. I don't need help, but I would love your company. This small shift in language can make a world of difference. It reminds your children that they are not responsible for you out of duty, but rather that their presence in your life is a source of joy. Margaret began changing the way she spoke to her children. Instead of insisting she was fine on her own, she started inviting them over more often, asking for little favors, not because she needed them, but because it gave them a reason to be involved. Slowly, the distance that had formed began to close, and her house felt warm again, filled with laughter and conversation. Independence does not mean isolation. It is okay to let your children take care of you in small ways, not because you need it, but because they need to feel needed too. After all, love is not about necessity, it is about presence, about showing up, and about letting each other in. And that is something money can never replace. 2. You should do this with your money. There's a certain wisdom that comes with age, wisdom earned through years of hard work, financial struggles, and lessons learned the hard way. Many of us remember what it was like to stretch every dollar, to sacrifice luxuries for the sake of stability, and to plan carefully so that we could provide for our families. Because of this, it's natural to want to guide our children in making smart financial choices. After all, we've seen what works and what doesn't. However, offering financial advice, especially when it is unsolicited, can sometimes do more harm than good. When we tell our children, you should do this with your money, or you need to save more, invest more, and spend less, what we intend as helpful guidance may come across as criticism, distrust, or even control. I once knew a man named George who had always been careful with money. He had built a comfortable retirement, living modestly and making sure every dollar had a purpose. His son, on the other hand, had a very different approach. He enjoyed traveling, investing in new ventures, and spending on experiences rather than accumulating wealth. Every time they spoke, George would tell his son, "You need to stop wasting money. You should be saving for the future. One day, you'll regret it." At first, his son would respond politely, nodding along, but over time, he started calling less. He stopped sharing details about his finances, afraid of hearing another lecture. The space between them grew, not because George didn't love his son, but because his well-meaning words made his son feel like he was being judged rather than supported. What George failed to realize was that financial decisions are deeply personal. Every generation faces different economic realities. What worked for us may not work for them. The cost of living, job market, and financial landscape have all changed, and our children must navigate these challenges in their own way. More importantly, money is not just about numbers, it's about values. While we may prioritize security, they may prioritize experiences. While we see stability as success, they may define success differently. The moment we start dictating how they should handle their finances, we risk turning financial discussions into sources of tension rather than opportunities for connection. One day, George's son finally spoke up. He said, "Dad, I know you want the best for me, but when you tell me how to handle my money, it makes me feel like you don't trust me. I need to make my own choices, even if they're different from yours." That was a turning point for George. He realized that his role was not to control his son's financial future, but to support him in becoming confident in his own decisions. Instead of telling his son what he should do, he changed his approach. He started saying things like, "I've learned a lot about finances over the years. If you ever want to talk about it, I'd be happy to share what I know. I admire how you are building your own life. If you ever need advice, I'm always here." This small shift made a world of difference. His son no longer felt defensive, and financial conversations became open, constructive, and even enjoyable. As we grow older, we must remember that our children need our support, not our control. They need to feel trusted, not micromanaged. The best thing we can do is offer wisdom when asked, listen without judgment, and allow them to build their own financial journey, just as we once did. In the end, our legacy is not about how much money we save or how many financial lessons we teach. It is about the relationships we nurture, the trust we build, and the love we share. Because true wealth is not measured in dollars. It is measured in the strength of our family bonds. 3. Why can't you be more like your sibling? Comparison is a quiet thief. It steals confidence, it steals peace, and worst of all, it steals love. As parents, we often want what's best for our children. We want them to succeed, to make wise choices, and to live fulfilling lives. But sometimes, in an effort to encourage them, we unknowingly wound them with comparisons. Telling your child, "Why can't you be more like your sibling?" may seem like a harmless push towards self-improvement, but to them it feels like a declaration that who they are is not enough. I once knew a woman named Evelyn, a proud mother of 3. Her eldest son, Mark, was a doctor, a man of discipline and precision. Her middle daughter, Sarah, was a devoted mother and teacher, nurturing and kind. And then there was Ben, her youngest. He was artistic, free-spirited, and saw life differently than his siblings. While Mark and Sarah followed conventional paths, Ben traveled, experimented with different careers, and lived a life that to Evelyn seemed uncertain and unstable. Whenever they gathered as a family, Evelyn would make small remarks. "Mark always has everything planned out. You should learn from him. Sarah is so responsible. She knows how to handle her life well. If only you were a little more like them, maybe life would be easier for you." She never meant to hurt Ben. In her mind, she was just guiding him toward a better future. But to Ben, each comment was a cut, a reminder that no matter what he did, he would never measure up in his mother's eyes. Over time, the wounds deepened. He started calling less, visiting less, and whenever he was around, there was a quiet sadness in his eyes. One day, during a family dinner, the truth came out. After yet another comparison, Ben finally spoke up. "Mom, do you even love me for who I am? Or do you just love who you wish I would be?" His words hit Evelyn like a stone. She had spent years believing she was helping her son, not realizing that she had been pushing him away. In trying to shape him into someone else, she had failed to see the beauty in who he already was. The truth is, no two children are the same. They are not meant to be. Each one has their own strengths, their own path, and their own definition of success. What works for one may not work for another, and that is the beauty of life. A garden is not beautiful because every flower is the same. It is beautiful because each one is unique. As parents, our job is not to mold our children into our vision of success, but to love them for who they are, not who we think they should be. We must celebrate their individuality, not measure them against one another. Instead of saying, "Why can't you be more like your sibling?" try saying, "I love the way you see the world. You bring something special to this family that no one else could. I admire the way you are creating your own path in life." After that dinner, Evelyn changed the way she spoke to Ben. She stopped comparing, and she started appreciating. Slowly, he started to come back, not just physically, but emotionally. Their relationship began to heal. At the end of the day, our children do not need to be the same to be equally loved. The greatest gift we can give them is the knowledge that they are cherished for exactly who they are. 4. Don't bring up the past. The past is a powerful thing. It holds our memories, our lessons, our triumphs, and our regrets. As we grow older, we often find ourselves looking back, sometimes with fondness, sometimes with pain. It is natural to want to reflect, to make sense of what has been, and to remind our children of the experiences that shaped us. But when we bring up the past in a way that reopens old wounds, it can do more harm than good. Many parents believe that reminding their children of past mistakes is a way of teaching them. We think, if I don't bring this up, how will they learn? But the truth is, most of the time, they have already learned. They have carried the weight of their mistakes far longer than we realize. And every time we mention it again, we are not teaching. We are wounding. I knew a woman named Lillian, a mother of 3. She had always been strong-willed, determined to guide her children toward the right path. But in doing so, she often brought up their past missteps. Her eldest son had once made a bad investment and lost a significant amount of money. Even though years had passed, every time finances came up, Lillian would say, "I just hope you don't make another mistake like you did before." Her middle daughter had gone through a difficult divorce. Though she had since rebuilt her life, whenever they talked about relationships, Lillian would say, "I just don't want to see you make the same mistake again." Her youngest had struggled in school as a child, and even though he had grown into a successful man, she would occasionally joke, "I remember how hard it was to get you to focus. You never were the studious type." To Lillian, these were just words, memories, reminders. But to her children, they were constant echoes of moments they wanted to leave behind. Every time she brought up the past, it reminded them not just of what had happened, but of her disappointment in them. Slowly, they stopped confiding in her. They became distant, not because they didn't love her, but because they didn't want to be reminded of who they once were. One day, her daughter finally spoke up. "Mom, I know I made mistakes, but I don't want to be defined by them for the rest of my life." That moment changed everything. Lillian realized that the past should be a place of wisdom, not a weapon. She had spent so much time looking back that she had forgotten to celebrate the present. Her children were no longer the people they had been years ago. They had grown, learned, and evolved, and they needed her to see them as they were now, not as who they used to be. If we want to keep our children close, we must learn to let go, not because the past doesn't matter, but because it has already done its job. It has shaped them, taught them, and led them to where they are today. They do not need reminders of their failures. They need encouragement for their future. Instead of saying, "I hope you don't make that mistake again," try saying, "I've seen how much you've grown, and I'm so proud of you. I admire the way you've handled challenges in life. No matter what happened in the past, I love who you are today." Lillian changed the way she spoke to her children. She started focusing on their strengths, their achievements, and their growth. The result? They came back. They called more. They visited more. Not because she erased the past, but because she finally let it rest. The past will always be part of us, but it should never be the thing that holds us back from loving fully in the present. Our children need to know that we see them not for who they were, but for who they have become. 5. Harsh words hurt family members. Words have power. They can lift someone up or tear them down. They can create bridges between hearts or build walls that last a lifetime. As parents, we have spent years guiding, advising, and sometimes correcting our children. But as we grow older, the way we speak to them becomes even more important. A single harsh word, spoken in frustration or habit, can leave a scar that lingers long after the conversation ends. I once knew a woman named Helen, a strong-willed mother who had always believed in discipline and honesty. She had raised her children with firm values, never hesitating to speak her mind. Even as they became adults, she found herself correcting them, pointing out their mistakes, and offering unsolicited advice, often with words sharper than she realized. When her son struggled with his job, she would say, "You've always been reckless with your career choices." When her daughter faced parenting challenges, she would sigh, "I raised 3 children just fine. I don't understand why this is so hard for you." If a family disagreement arose, she would snap, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" To Helen, these were just words, spoken in moments of frustration, meant to push her children to do better. But to her children, they were wounds. Each comment, no matter how small, felt like a reminder that they would never be good enough in her eyes. They began to pull away. Calls became shorter, visits became less frequent, and soon she found herself alone more often than not, wondering where things had gone wrong. It wasn't until one Thanksgiving, when only one of her children showed up, that she finally asked, "Why doesn't everyone come home anymore?" Her daughter hesitated but then spoke honestly, "Mom, it's because we don't want to be criticized every time we see you." Helen was stunned. She had never thought of herself as unkind. She had never meant to hurt her children. But in that moment, she realized something painful. Her words had become a barrier, pushing away the very people she loved most. We often believe that because we are parents, we have the right to say whatever we feel. We think, "They're my children. They should understand." But the truth is, no matter how old they get, our children still long for our approval, our kindness, and our love. They still want to feel like home is a safe place, not one where they will be met with criticism or harsh words. When we speak in anger or frustration, we may feel justified in the moment, but words, once spoken, cannot be taken back. A single sentence can echo in someone's heart for years, shaping how they feel about themselves and about us. So, what can we do? We can choose our words carefully. We can replace criticism with encouragement, frustration with understanding, and judgment with love. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," try, "I appreciate it when we can talk openly." "You're doing it wrong." Try, "Would you like to hear how I used to handle this?" "After everything I've done for you." Try, "I'm so grateful for our relationship." Helen took her daughter's words to heart. She made a conscious effort to soften her speech, to replace criticism with kindness, and to express love more often. Slowly, her children started coming back, not just physically, but emotionally. They called more, visited more, and their conversations became warmer, lighter. The lesson is simple but profound. Words can either pull a family together or push it apart. Choose them with love. Because in the end, it's not about who was right or wrong in a conversation. It's about whether the people we love still feel safe enough to come home. Final thoughts. The power of words in old age. Growing older brings wisdom, but it also brings a new understanding of what truly matters in life. When we were younger, we often believed that success, financial security, and discipline were the cornerstones of a good life. We worked hard, raised our children, and did our best to prepare them for the world. But as the years pass, we come to realize that the most valuable thing we have is not money, achievements, or even the lessons we taught. It is the relationships we nurture and the love we share. As parents, we spent decades shaping the lives of our children. We guided them, corrected them, and sometimes even scolded them because we wanted them to grow into strong, capable individuals. But now, in this stage of life, our role is different. Our children are no longer looking for discipline or direction from us. They are looking for love, understanding, and acceptance. The words we choose in our later years have the power to either strengthen these bonds or break them. I have seen too many older parents live with regret, not because of what they did, but because of what they said. A careless remark spoken in frustration, a judgment made too quickly, a comparison that lingered in a child's heart. These small moments build up over time. Slowly, children withdraw, visits become less frequent, and the warmth of the family home fades. And then, one day, we look around and realize that we are alone. Not because our children do not love us, but because they no longer feel safe being near us. A woman I once knew, Margaret, had spent years unintentionally pushing her children away with harsh words. She believed that honesty was a virtue, and she never hesitated to speak her mind. If she thought her son was making bad financial decisions, she told him. If she felt her daughter was not raising her children correctly, she pointed it out. If she thought someone was not living up to their potential, she reminded them. In her mind, she was simply being truthful, offering advice as any loving mother would. But she did not realize that her truth came at the cost of closeness. Her children started visiting less, sharing less, and eventually she became just another voice they avoided. One day, as she sat alone on her birthday, waiting for calls that never came, she finally understood. It was not their lives that needed to change, it was her words. She made a decision that day to speak differently, to be more intentional with her words. Instead of giving advice, she offered encouragement. Instead of pointing out mistakes, she celebrated growth. Instead of making her children feel like they were never enough, she reminded them that they had always been more than enough for her. And slowly, something beautiful happened. Her children started coming back. This is the power of words. They do not just communicate ideas, they communicate love, acceptance, and warmth. And in old age, love is the only thing that truly matters. If there is one lesson to take away, let it be this: our children will forget many things in life, but they will never forget how we made them feel. They will remember the conversations where they felt uplifted, the phone calls where they felt heard, and the visits where they felt welcomed with open arms. They will also remember the words that hurt them, the judgments that made them feel small, and the comparisons that made them question their worth. We cannot change the past, but we can shape the present. We can choose right now to be the kind of parents who speak with love rather than criticism, who uplift rather than tear down, who embrace rather than push away. We can decide that our words will be a source of comfort, not conflict. Because in the end, our greatest legacy is not the wealth we leave behind or the achievements we once had. It is the love we gave, the words we spoke, and the family we kept close. Speak with kindness, and you will never grow old alone. These lessons are meant to inspire you to live fully and authentically. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Take a moment to reflect and share one thing you've learned and plan to apply in your own life. Let's support each other on this journey toward embracing these truths. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment with 1. If not, feel free to comment with 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and here's to living life on your own terms.